TNA Wrestling cross that line one more time as we head ever closer to Rebellion next weekend. It's going to be a huge weekend for wrestling next weekend, and Rebellion will play a big part of it. But we're not there yet because on AMC and TNA Plus last night we had Impact, and my oh my, did Impact kick off in a way in which defines TNA wrestling with a lot of action. But first things first, Santana took the mic and was addressing everything that happened with Steve Macklin a couple of weeks ago. Those of you that will recall at Sacrifice, Steve Macklin was unable to continue his match with Santana after being kicked in the face. Referee had to stop the match. Correctly done. But he did say that he fulfilled his promise in entering Rebellion as the champion and will vow to leave Rebellion as champion as well. But he's going to have to take on Eddie Edwards, which brung out the system. And this was Eddie Edwards and Cedric Alexander that come out this time. But Edwards pretty confidently saying that he will become a three-time TNA World Heavyweight Champion come the end of Rebellion. And just as these two look like they were going to jump Mike Santana, out comes the youngest in charge, the X Division champion, Leon Slater, although he was closely followed by Mustafa Ali and Order 4. More so, Agent Zero, Trey Miguel come out as well, so we're getting there, and Moose come out. And before things escalated any further, it was announced that we were going to get an eight-man tag between Santana, Leon Slater, Trey Miguel, Moose versus Eddie Edwards, Cedric Alexander, Mustafa Ali, and Special Agent Zero. Not only that, the match starts right now. This was a fast-paced, chaotic eight-man tag team match, and this is kind of how TNA should always start impacts with this because this defines TNA wrestling. It really, really did. What really caught the eye of definitely the fans in attendance, but me as well. There was a showdown between Special Agent Zero and Moose, and it drew a thunderous reaction inside NOLA, and they were fully invested in the hard hitting exchanges between there's two. The momentum swung back and forward throughout. All eight were really heavily involved in this, which is good because sometimes you see one get taken out and they don't come back in. This was like heavily involving all eight men, all of them getting some really good offense in there as well. It was a really exciting match. And the closing stretch of this match was exactly what was exactly what the fans really expected. Each participant managing to hit their signature moves and finishes in a rapid succession, turning the matches kind of like into a highlight reel of chaos. But ultimately, it was Eddie Edwards that scored the victory over Santana again with the Boston Knee Party. And, next week's go, he's really in the head of the World Heavyweight Champion right now, and the more that Eddie Edwards picks up the victories and picks up the momentum, the more he walks into Rebellion as favorite for that World Heavyweight Championship. So, but what a great match! What a match to start Rebellion, to start Impact off this week. We head backstage right now, and there's a lot going on with Daria Ray and Santino Marella. She was questioning Santino Marella for constantly booking impromptu matches and rushing matches together, saying he's becoming unpredictable and unprofessional. And Santino was like, he's simply giving the fans what they want, and it's a reaction to the energy that they're giving off on the show. But but Daria then pushes back and basically implies that there's been a board meeting and his actions are under review. Anyway, We'll get more on that in a minute. Now, last week on TNA, we saw the TNA debut. Well, of the fact that he'd been signed, shall we say, sacrifice Ricky Sosa. And Eric Young has had a message for him. He's sort of basically saying, Ross, Sosa was congratulated. They showed you the backstage bit. And then he was confronted by Eric Young, who calls himself the gatekeeper of TNA wrestling. A cleanse of Ricky Sosa may already be coming to TNA. We'll see what happens next week on Impact. Don't forget, you can watch TNA Impact on AMC and AMC Plus over in America, Sports Center 360 in Canada, and over here in the UK and globally, TNA Plus. Get the app downloaded, get subscribed. $9.99 a month gives you everything. The impacts, the specials like Rebellion, your big ones like Bound for Glory, and of course, access to the TNA archive where you can see everyone from TNA's past, like AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels, and more. Hardys were next, obviously following the betrayal by the Righteous. And, it wasn't long before the Righteous interrupt here, and they're not victims, but they're the offerings. And I somewhat wonder if this is saying that there's maybe someone else behind all of this. I don't know. Um, but Matt Hardy was wanting, well, apocalyptic consequences. We seem to sort of fluctuate from Matt Hardy and broken Matt Hardy in this promo. And I don't know where, well, I do know where we're going because it's going to happen in a minute where we're going to go with it. And they're going to be a tag team match next week on Impact, but not just any tag team match. It is going to be for the World Tag Team Championships, and it is going to be a tables match next week. The Hardys, the Righteous, the week before, well, a few days before Rebellion, they're going to step in there in a tables match, and the winners of that match will take on the System, which I believe is going to be Bear Bronson, I believe, is going to be a part of that tag team match. Bear Bronson and Brian Myers, if memory serves me right. Now, Santana was backstage dealing with his loss when he's approached by Knockouts champion Ariana Grace, who we'll see a bit later, and Channing Stacks Lorenzo. And she was mocking Santana. She says that champions don't lose, and he tells him to leave, but he does get into a confrontation with Stacks. And then Santana says to the cameras, what are they doing here anyway? They're not just meant to pop up in the impact zone. Now, we see backstage that Tessa Blanchard and Victoria Crawford and co are getting ready for the bunkhouse match, the first ever knockouts bunkhouse match. The bunny appears behind Tessa Blanchard in front of Victoria Crawford. Anyway, we haven't seen the bunkhouse match. We haven't seen a female bunkhouse match before. Tessa Blanchard, Jodie Fret leaving it all in the ring, scars and marks galore on their bodies at the end of this. And I would say that I do feel as if this could have gone a little bit longer. I think it should have done, to be honest, especially because this was the first ever knockout bunkhouse match. And it was a real shame that we didn't get the sort of, yeah, I would say a longer match. These two are fantastic together in the ring as well. Great chemistry between Tessa and Bunkhouse match. And there was a bit in this where Tessa was getting her body twisted as Jodie was choking her on the turnbuckle. That was a real, I would say, violent sight of this Bunkhouse bit to see. Other than the time here, the lack of time in the bunkhouse match, it was a really violent, hard hitting match between the two that I really enjoyed. And it was Tessa Blanchard that chokes Jodie Fret into unconsciousness with the belt for the victory. And Tessa reigns supreme, and can't be too much longer now before Tessa Blanchard is in that Knockouts Championship contention. However, her night hasn't finished yet. We'll get into that in a bit more detail. Now, Ryan Nemeth is backstage at this point, and he's looking for the person who attacked his brother Nick. we do find out who it is, but I still have my suspicions that Ryan is behind the attack. But he does bump into BDE. That then Kaz then shows up, and he basically completely butchers BDE's names on purpose. And then Elijah's music hits, the Drifter emerges, and that prompts Kazarian and Ryan Nemeth to walk out. But that does look like a tag team that we may see, or a tag match that we may see in the future. AJ Francis and the Hometown Man were next. Now we've seen these two fight quite a bit recently on TNA Impact for sure. AJ Francis is still, in my opinion, one of the best big men. I know he says he's the best big man in the business, but he's brilliant. I really think that so many people, you know, don't give this guy his flowers. And you can see our interview of AJ Francis in the special in the TNA exclusive interview playlist below. Make sure you check that out. But I think AJ Francis is been brilliant. He's probably been one of TNA's best signings. And as you know, look, he's re-signed. He mentioned that on our podcast, and yeah, there's no reason, why he wouldn't re-sign. He's been excellent for TNA, and TNA wouldn't have him if they didn't want him. And we need to talk about something that's a bit of a news on it, someone that's leaving. But let's get rid of this. Let's get this match done first. The highlight of this was really what happened after the match. As you know, the hometown man, obviously in his hometown, AJ Francis picks up the win with the TFL spear and the down payment choke slam on him. But it was everything that happened after. And Francis, he references the attack on Nick Nemeth, and he basically says, "This is no episode of Murder She Wrote. I was the one that attacked Nick Nemeth," and he recalls his debut in TNA with Joe Hendry. He says he's been taking out the fan favorites ever since, although Nick isn't really a fan favorite at this point, so I'm not sure where he's going with that. Now, Nick Nemeth come out and he got on the ring rope at this point, and as AJ Francis moves closer, he moved away. But he, Nick, Ryan looked like he was smiling on this. I don't know whether you caught that, but it looked as though that he was smiling during the end of this, which again leads me to believe perhaps that it was him that instigated the attack on his brother Nick. I'm sure it's going to come out. He's going to have something to do with it. That's just where my belief at this point, anyway, is that Ryan will have come out and said that he have something to do with his brothers beating up, being attacked backstage by AJ Francis. And AJ Francis and Nick Nemeth will go one-on-one at Rebellion next weekend. So that'll be an interesting one to see. Now, I mentioned about departure from TNA, and this departure sucks. It really, really does. It is Danny Luna. News broke earlier on this week that Danny Luna had requested her release from TNA Wrestling, and that release was granted. Whew. I really think that TNA have dropped it with her. I really, really do. It's She was on the run of her life. She should have won a sacrifice against Ariana Grace, and she should have won that. I don't know why they hadn't pulled the trigger on her. We probably will never know why. But that is a huge loss to TNA Wrestling, and it's going to be a huge pickup if she does sign anywhere else. Will she stay on the independents? I don't know. But there is a huge, huge loss to TNA. And it's more of a loss to TNA than it is to Danny Luna. It's as simple as that. Real shame that one well, real shame that TNA let her go and didn't give her the opportunity that she probably deserved in this. Well, not that even she probably deserved, that she did deserve in this. So real shame on that one. And we will wish Danny Luna well, and hopefully we'll see her on our TV screens very, very soon. That leads me to the Knockouts World Championship match between Ariana Grace and Xia Brookside. This was okay. This wasn't too bad. I didn't think in a million Sundays that Xia Brookside was going to beat Ariana Grace, and I was right. Ariana Grace did hit her with a fall from grace after hitting Xia Brookside with the belt. By the way, I might add. So that was the end of that one. But Ariana Grace and Stax, they were about to jump. Lei Ying Lee at this point, but Mike Santana arrived to make the save. He gets into a verbal confrontation. Stacks tries to interrupt, but he gets hit with spin the block. And as they exit the ring, Eddie Edwards emerges from the crowd and was claiming that Ariana Grace has got inside Mike Santana's head, and also that he has pinned Mike twice, which is very, very true. And Santana was saying, "Get in the guardrail," and he vows to beat Eddie Edwards at Rebellion. And we'll see if he does next week, and you can too on TNA Plus over here in the UK. But I mentioned that we hadn't finished with Tessa Blanchard. Now she was walking into a room wondering what the hell this place is, and the camera pans behind her to see Father Jim Mitchell sitting in a chair, welcoming her to the undead realm. And that was it. And sort of Blanchard's face kind of thought, well, she's about to endure some horror, which is really interesting. Got me thinking, has Max the Impaler signed with TNA Wrestling? Because Father Jim Mitchell and Max were together on NWA. I don't know whether that's factual or not, but it's Tessa Blanchard in the Undead Realm. And that's how TNA ended this week. So we're going to have to wait a week to find out some more information. But the show was awesome this week. Really good job of building towards Rebellion, the tension between Santana and Edwards, the AJ Francis promo. We've got the Righteous and the Hardys next week in their tables match. It's a little bit kind of really quick. They go from that to the system at Rebellion next weekend. And don't know what's going to happen with Tessa Blanchard and Jim Mitchell, but I'm really intrigued about that next week. So we have to keep it watching next week on TNA, as you guys will too. Go to, like I said, AMC Plus in the States, SportsCenter 360 in Canada, and around the world, TNA Plus. Download it, subscribe it. £9.99 in the UK gives you everything. Don't forget to follow us at HTT Buckle everywhere, and we'll be back next week with some more, and we'll be back this weekend on Sunday with This Week in Wrestling. But until then, everybody, cross the line, stay safe, and goodbye.